Welcome to the first episode of the Marcanine podcast. This episode actually has a very special place in my heart, not just because it's the first episode of the podcast, but because we have a guest on here who's extremely special to me and brings a lot of nostalgia back from my childhood, and probably will for you too. He's done notable voice work in live-action sort of animated movies like Sausage Party, animated films in the DC universe. He's done anime. He's done quite a bit, but probably most notable is his role as the first Goku in North America in Dragon Ball Z. Please give it up for Ian James Corlett.
Something is heading straight for us. I can't believe there's someone out there who's even stronger than Vegeta. Pretty wild, huh?
I can't tell you how much it means to me to be able to be talking to you. Like, this is a big deal, not just for my own passions and interests, but just because I've wanted to get to know you for a while and know what you've been up to and all that. So this is a huge deal. Thank you for spending time with me. I appreciate it.
I'm happy to be here, and I have a question for you right off the top.
Yeah, sure.
How did you manage to be Goku on Twitter?
Okay, so
Did you get it when you were like 3?
So this is kind of a funny story. So I remember when I first figured out what Twitter was back in like 2005, 2006, somewhere in that era. I didn't really know what I was doing, had no idea how to get followers or interact with people, but I stumbled across a handful of accounts that were fictional characters. I think there was like a Homer Simpson one, a Darth Vader one, Lord Voldemort, just a handful of stuff. And they spoke in humorous tones as their respective characters from their respective franchises. And I was like, you know what? I really love Dragon Ball. I wonder if there's someone out there doing a Goku one. And I found a couple of like accounts out there that, I mean, no disrespect to them, but they felt like they were maybe 12-year-olds who were just kind of like posting and being silly. And the actual @Goku name was being unused. It was made, never used, nothing. So I made one of my own, some off-brand Goku name or whatever. And after a while, it amassed like 40,000 some followers. And one day I just happened to be looking and the Goku account had been deleted for inactivity. I snagged it, and then after that, I've had it for over 14 years now. I've had it since 2006.
Wow.
Yeah.
Holy smokes.
Yeah.
Good on you, Goku.
Yeah. Here's the thing, though. I may be Goku on Twitter, but you are the real Goku in my heart, honestly. That's not blowing smoke. Like, I mean that. We'll get,
How's that? Does that sound like
Dragon Ball talk?
Frighteningly real, isn't it?
Yeah. We'll get into the Dragon Ball talk here in just a bit. I first kind of want to see how you're doing, how you've been dealing with the lockdown. Like, how's your family? Like, what's been going on in your neck of the woods right now?
Well, I'm fantastic because I spend so much time in this little room that I love working in it. And I feel like this whole pandemic has sort of brought the whole audio voiceover mechanics to my way of thinking. I mean, I've had remote recording capabilities for like 20 plus years.
Sure.
And always really liked it. Now, that's not to take anything away from, working as a group in an ensemble or anything, but my lifestyle has changed, maybe 20% because I can't go out for dinner to some place that I want to go or see a play or do those things. But, we walk the dog and I go to work in my little dark room, and sometimes I put on pants, sometimes I don't. So it's been really fine for me. Like it's good. There's obviously a mental kind of toll, and it's fine. I think my wife gets a little more stir crazy than I do. But it's good, and the work continues. That animation, thank goodness, has been one of the things that has kind of kept going during this time in terms of a business. So it's good. It's good. I'm enjoying living in LA. Moved here a few years ago, and the weather's great. Nothing against Vancouver, but I refer to Vancouver a little bit like an abusive girlfriend who's really, really pretty. And you go, well, yeah, but when we're together and she's nice, it's really nice. In that way, I'm only referring to Vancouver's climate and weather because it rains a lot. But when it's beautiful, and it's gorgeous, and the air is good, and the people are nice, and it feels like a city, but it's not like a mega city, and the food's good, and then it rains, and then it doesn't stop raining.
Well, myself as well. I'm in Orange County, so Southern California. I can attest to the fact that we rarely get rain. Anytime I see a cloud, I'm like, is it going to rain today? Are we going to get that? And then no. And then droughts all around. But this brings me to an extremely important question that I think everybody was wondering right now. Are you wearing pants in this exact moment?
I am wearing shorts.
Okay. All right. That counts. That's
They are pants, though. They are pants. They just happen to be not
short pants.
Full pants.
You know, what I love so much is as a voice actor, we talked about this briefly but before we started recording, that when you hear a voice actor's voice, it's immediately recognizable. It doesn't matter what sort of entertainment that I'm watching. If there's a voice, whether you hear it on screen in live action, whether it's Eastern anime or if it's Western animation, you always recognize a voice immediately. And I love that just talking to you, I can hear some of these characters that I grew up with, Megaman, Cheetor from Beast Wars, Goku. Like I hear it when I talk to you, and I don't know, it warms my heart. Like there's brevity and warmth and all these things, and I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to get over it. So this is a big treat for me right now.
Well, thank you. Thank you. The weird thing about those characters that you mentioned is that is not at all what I really entered this business to do. I'll just backtrack, I'll try to give you the short story. I got into voiceover from a history of making my own films when I was a kid.
Oh, okay.
And I made little animated films, and eventually I upgraded to, Super 8 that had sound, and I would do some voices, and I was always into animation, like for real. So these people that tell you, oh, I just love animation, and, they happen to fall into voice acting, don't believe them. I was a total animation nerd. I had Walt Disney posters on my wall. This is before you could buy anything, and before there was like merch at Disneyland. The most you could get was maybe a Mickey Mouse t-shirt. Sure. Anyway, I digress. So the point is, I got into the creative world through my own filmmaking, and I really enjoyed it. As I started to grow up, I had a real job, and I just went, I don't know, I want to do something else. And my city, Vancouver, was very big in producing audio for radio commercials. There was actually a really thriving business there. So long story short, banged on the door lots and lots and lots, and I entered that world of advertising through character voices. That was my thing. I want to do character voices. I could do accents and all that stuff. And so that's how I sort of got my big toe in the door. And then one day, some client, now radio was changing at that point, and the announcer was turning from an announcer to people that sounded like your neighbor. So it was perfect timing for me because I was, I could act, I could read. And one day, one of the clients went, no, we want you to do the announcer tag. And I went, what? Yeah, just sound like you. You make it sound, like a normal person. Oh, because I was used to hiding behind, some Scottish accent or something like that, or, some character. And
I want to hear more of that. Let's keep talking in the Scottish. That's one I haven't heard. We got to keep doing that.
So it's very weird, is what I'm telling you, to get hired to sound like you. So the same thing happened in animation. Like fast forward, animation work starts coming to Canada and then Vancouver, and I was beside myself because all I ever wanted to do when I was a kid was move to LA and make films. Not necessarily be a voice actor, but like be involved in the business. Sure. So suddenly the business is coming to me in Vancouver, which I couldn't believe. And, I'm getting gigs as, the crazy little white guy. And then as we go and, get cast in this, get cast in that. And then these like heroic shows come up. And I'm trying to think of the first one that sounded like me, and it was very uncomfortable for me, like, honestly, to start acting like this guy. Ew. Because I'm just not that guy. Like, that requires acting. I'm just telling you. So to your point of hearing me as, the voice of Megaman or Goku or Cheetor, that was amazing to me that I got cast as like the lead or a lead hero. So, because I'm not built like that. I mean, fortunately I can sound like the Tom Cruise hero or the Brad Pitt hero, but I'm not a hero. Anyway, but thanks for recognizing me. I don't think everyone has the ear that you do, by the way.
Really?
I don't think everyone goes, oh, like walking down the street, I never get recognized. Ever.
Well, maybe that just comes with the territory of being like a geek or a nerd, if you will, in that regard. Because it's funny. So, like, just on topic of Dragon Ball Z, and we'll get to more of that in a little bit, but just on topic of that for a brief moment, I distinctly remember as a kid when I watched the very first episode of Dragon Ball Z, and it was just a weird timing thing. I was 7 years old. I was in my room, no cable, still the antennas like on the TV, and Fox was like Channel 7 or something for me, and I happened to stumble on it on a Sunday morning, and it was the very first episode of Dragon Ball Z where Raditz shows up. And then so when I was first introduced, I'm like, I don't understand the context of Dragon Ball, because I don't think the Dragon Ball anime had a North American audience or even an English dubbing for that matter at that time that I was aware of. So I jumped right into Dragon Ball Z, having not seen any of that, but I was hooked eventually just by the sheer fighting and the badassery of it. But I know that I fell in love with your voice as Goku because not just because you're the first. It's kind of like I think I have this argument about James Bond sometimes when it's like my favorite James Bond movie, Sean Connery, [1, right? Very first. But I gotta say, I think Daniel Craig is like the best James Bond.
Oh no, I couldn't agree with you more. Like, so we're friends now. That's okay. And you nailed
that's the thing is like Goldfinger, favorite James Bond movie, and then Daniel Craig, best Bond. But for you, like, I don't think you're the best Goku because you're the first. I think they both happen to align there. If Daniel Craig was James Bond first, he would be the best because he's Daniel Craig, not because he was the first. Wow. So I'm
going to take all this, by the way. I'm taking it.
Yeah, no, please.
You're pushing all the right buttons, my friend.
And I remember, like, eventually, as the episode, like, I think on Fox, like, it switched networks, went to Cartoon Network. It had the Toonami block, and you were still doing voices, or you were still doing the voice of Goku for that before it switched over to Peter Kalamis and then eventually Sean Schemmel. But I remember I'd be rushing home as fast as I could. I think it was like 5 p.m. or something like that for me. Getting off the bus, running home as fast as I could, and popping right in front of the TV and trying to catch the latest episode. And when I think it was technically a new season and your voice changed to someone else, I'm like, is this guy sick? Is this a cold? Like, did they make him work when he was like under the weather? What is this? Because I don't think I was old enough to really understand like what was going on. I just knew I was confused. And from that point, I knew that I was vastly disappointed by the shifting of the voices, because you captured that perfectly. And that I will never,
Thank you.
I will never let that go or give in to anyone who disagrees, because there's just no way for me.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned the James Bond thing, because I get asked this question all the time, and especially at conventions and stuff. But that's exactly the example that I use. Most people have a favorite Bond. They have a favorite movie. Sometimes they're not the same.
Right.
But a lot of it is defined by where you were when you came into the series.
Right.
So for me, my Bond is Roger Moore.
Sure.
Because I watch that stuff and I just go, it was the cheese era of Bond. And he was, in the end, he was getting a little too old, but he was smooth. He didn't have a Scottish accent.
Right.
And, he was my Bond. And I would argue with people, Sean Connery was the first. Yeah, I know, but the thing with Sean Connery, I'm getting off on a Bond tangent here.
No
as
worries.
You can see, it means something to me.
Sure.
But, Connery looked like the James Bond of the books. Like when you read the books, you go, oh, that actually, he fit that.
Yeah.
but he couldn't hide the Scottish accent just kept coming in.
Yeah.
And like, he's supposed to be like really British, but anyway, okay, that's fine. So then, fast forward, Daniel Craig comes along, boom. Even my Bond, which was Roger Moore, said, I think he's the best Bond.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
like, there you go, done. No argument. Daniel Craig is the best Bond. The next one will be very interesting. Like they hit it out of the park in The Last Generation.
Mm-hmm.
Idris Elba would have been perfect, but he's too old. Like that guy would just like that for the times and everything. You just go, ooh, that would have worked. Yeah. So they're going to be. I'm just really, really interested to see where they go. I have some ideas, but we'll see. Yeah,
I'm curious. I'm a huge James Bond fan as well. I've got a couple of first edition books on display. I do have a Goldfinger book, first printing as well, in a display case that I have. But I've been a huge fan, and Daniel Craig, I mean, his tenure as Bond was great, but it was always like really good movie, not so great. Really good movie, not so great. It kind of went up and down a little bit.
That's kind of that's the Bond thing. I mean, they're not all hits.
Yeah.
And you know what this week on Let's Discuss James Bond.
I love it. Let's do it.
I think this. When I saw Casino Royale with Daniel Craig, and that first 5 minutes, 6 minutes, where he's freaking killing someone in a bathroom, I thought of that and I went, wow, this is so much different than the other movies. But here's the thing. Every generation of James Bond was the right kind of movie for the times that it was made, right?
Right.
And so we had sort of the silly Pierce Brosnan era, but that's what was happening in action movies. It's just the way it was.
Right.
And then if you go back even further, right to the beginning, I think what resonated with people with Sean Connery was it was dangerous. It was different than the other movies that were coming out with this guy who was like, whoa, he kills people and he's not invincible, but he's kind of, anyway, I just felt like that's what they regained with Daniel Craig and the style of filmmaking. It was edgy. It was still big, giant budget stuff, but it was dangerous. Right. And he's great. And
I think it's kind of it's like the James Bond is kind of like the Batman comparison, kind of like how we're talking about the Goku comparison in voice actors. Daniel Craig, love him, sad to see him go, curious to see what happens next. But when it comes to anime, when you have a beloved character who's like drawn in a cartoon form, right? The only thing that you can really do to bring that character alive is the voice acting. And I've talked to many people about like the Batman comparison, about how depending on when you grew up, like who was your Batman. Some, depending on the age group, it might be Adam West, it might be Michael Keaton. Some may even say Val Kilmer. For me, I grew up with George Clooney as Batman with the big bat nipples. Like those were terrible. But as a kid, I didn't know any better, so I loved them. And then you eventually get Christian Bale.
Well, he was a movie star,
right?
George Clooney,
right? And so now you have so many different iterations of all these different characters, and I feel like undisputed champion. I just got to stand with the man Christian Bale being the best Batman, and that's where I feel like the voice of Goku as well. It's not necessarily who's the first is the best. I just think it's who brought the character to life. So they all kind of tie in together. So I don't know. I feel like it's so important to kind of like put the final nail in that coffin and just be like, this is the end right here. There's no more discussion objectively.
Well, I mean, you are Goku on Twitter, so I guess people are going to have to listen to you.
That's true. If I say
I'm not
that,
going to argue with you.
It's gospel. I can't. I have more followers than Sean Schemmel, so no one can fight me on that.
How many followers do you have, by the way?
So this is kind of funny. So I was about 280,000, and then someone stole my phone that knew that I had that account, and they hijacked it, and they blocked like 70,000 people, and they were wiping it and like trying to steal the name. Like they took over my YouTube channel. They took over everything. It sucked. Oh. And so now I've been trying to recuperate that loss for the past like couple of years, and then Twitter changed its algorithm and how things get recommended and preferred. So now it's around 228,000. And I was expecting that there was going to be a big surge of Goku fans and anime fans, because in Japan for the Olympics, Goku and several other prominent anime characters were supposed to be ambassadors for Japan as they did the Olympics. And Goku was the big front and center one. So I'm thinking, like, that's going to look pretty good for Dragon Ball related social media. But, you know, obviously that didn't happen because now everybody's, like, you know, staying at home. And, well, it doesn't really work out that way.
Right.
But, yeah, about 228,000 right
Wow.
now. It goes up and down
Now,
depending on...
I'm sure I follow you.
You do, yeah.
But I don't. I know I don't. Like, I don't read a lot of Twitter. It's,
Sure.
you know, I guess a lot of people are the same way. You kind of go through your,
Right.
you know, 30, and you go, okay, I gotta do something else. And then there's, you know, probably 200 that you haven't read. So what kind of stuff do you tweet?
Okay, so this
Goku.
is such an odd thing. So a lot of times what I do is I'll get involved with the community some. Like, the anime community is very temperamental. So whatever you put out there while representing their fandom, as I'm sure you know of all people, they go to ape shit. So I try not to put so much out there because they get mad if it's like not exactly correct or if I don't put quotes on things. It's just that's just Twitter, I think, as a whole. So I think what I've done mostly now is I'm like, you know what? Like, I don't make any money off of this. I don't plan to. This is just something that I do for fun. And I try to speak words of encouragement in kind of the voice of the character. I always think, like, would Goku say this to Gohan, or would Goku have heard this from Master Roshi, or something like that? Every now and again, I'll do a joke or something silly that fans will get. But to be honest, unless I've put it in quotations, it's always like motivational quotes that I've just kind of thought up. Like, I'll just be sitting there and I'm going through a hard time and I try to tell myself something to pull myself out of it. And so I'm like, you know what? I should follow my own words and I should put these words out there. And people seem to like it. So that's really all I've been trying to do every now and again.
Okay.
But
I think that's a good plan.
yeah, but mostly Twitter consumption's unhealthy. I try not to read too much of that. That's nonsense. Ugh. Misinformation. Ugh. Can't stand it.
Yep.
I use Twitter, but I don't like it. I don't like it at all.
Yep.
It's terrible. Okay, so we've talked a bit about Dragon Ball Z, and there's more time for that in a bit. But I want to talk about Beast Wars, Mega Man, other projects that people would recognize your voice for, but maybe it's not something that you're as well known for. No disrespect. But I wanted to know more about those experiences going from, say, I mean, I hate to say that Mega Man is like a North American like thing, because obviously it comes from, you know, the East, but it's still like it had a bit of a North American animation kind of flavor to it.
Sure,
like,
it did. Yeah.
Talk to me about that experience. Talk to me about what it's like going from, you know, Goku and then to Mega Man and other voice acting roles. Like, what's that like?
Well, okay, those two are kind of bad examples because they're so similar. Like, I group the three together. Mega Man, Cheetor, and Goku are all heroes.
Yeah.
You know, Mega Man was goofier. Actually, Goku was pretty goofy at times too. But there was definitely like something serious was at stake with Goku. Like, he had to save everything. And Cheetor was just like full on drama. Sure, there's always some jokes, but the biggest difference is when like doing other characters, you know, like more modern ones that I do for like a little girls show on Disney called Vampirina. I do a French skeleton chef named Chef Remy Bones. So like those are just completely different headspaces, mindsets, and, you know, characterizations. Whereas a hero, and this is not to take anything away from being a hero, but they're really boring. Like, they always have to do the right thing, and they always have to be intense. And, you know, that's why those three voices that we were referencing before, Mega Man, Goku, and Cheetor, they sound the same. Yeah. There's very slight different attitudes and adjustments to them. But tonally, they're very similar, right? And I love, you know, really diving into like a character voice. And that kind of goes back to what got me into the business. So I'm not sure if that answered your question. But.
No, it does. And that kind of led me to wondering, like, do you have any sort of resentment against the hero characters? Because that sort of do-gooder attitude can be boring. So you did answer that. So I take it you like the villain characters more, or like the sort of indifferent characters.
Villains or comedic villains, even more so. But comedic characters are far more fun and interesting to me. But just to take issue a little bit, I would never call it resentment to heroes. I mean, they're heroes are heroes, right?
Right.
But it's not the most it's not the most fun thing to do. They're serious, right? They're just serious, and that's not me. It requires acting for me to be, a serious hero. Ooh, look at that up on the hill there. We're gonna have to. Okay.
So who would be your favorite then? Because I think a lot of voice actors have a favorite if they don't say it publicly. Do you have a favorite that you've made public?
Yeah, kind of. But it's, this is gonna sound cliche. It's kind of like children, picking your favorite child, which I do actually.
Have a favorite child as well?
Oh yeah. I have a favorite child. I'm not going to tell you guys. Well, okay, I can say this. I split it up by gender, and I have a favorite daughter, and then I have a favorite son.
I'm going to go on a limb here.
I only have 2 kids.
When I thought you have 2 kids, one of each.
Okay. Anyway.
Well played.
No,
I like that.
I do have roles that I have really enjoyed, and one of my favorites was Coconuts in Sonic the Hedgehog.
Love Sonic
because that was one of the first ones where I could really do my kind of Jerry Lewis-y thing.
Gosh.
And I wanted to do that like ever since I started voice acting, because one of my I guess it's an idol. The voice actor that I really looked up to was Dawes Butler, and he's like, that's Google him, look him up if you don't know him. I knew him from Stan Freeberg's comedy records, like from the 50s and maybe into the 60s. And they were way old when I was listening to them. I was a little kid. But I just loved his voices, Dawes Butler, and he's all over the Hanna-Barbera catalog. Like, I mean, you'll throw a rock and you'll find him.
Yeah, I'm looking now. We got Snagglepuss, we've got Huckleberry Hound, and then obviously Barney Rubble. I mean, Quick Draw McGraw, Wally Gator. Yeah, I mean, God, this guy's done. You're right. Like literally everything for Hanna-Barbera cartoons.
Yeah, and it was like funny stuff, and especially the Stan Freeberg radio stuff. He's really funny in. So anyway, that was why I answered Sonic and Coconuts. And then I did another role that I really, 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 really enjoyed. It's a series I don't think anyone saw, called Dr. Dimension Pants. That was the name of the series, and I played a character with a really giant head and a little body, and he was an evil villain, and his name was the Cortex. And people in the show would call him Cortex, and it was like, the Cortex, not Cortex, and he would get really upset. And I just liked him because he was nuts. Like, he was really big and over the top, and I really enjoyed that voice. So, there's lots and lots and lots and lots of voices that I've really enjoyed doing. Those two kind of pop to mind. And I guess I have another one. I like Hugh Test on Johnny Test.
Right.
Because he's also big, over the top, and dumb. And Johnny, it's meatloaf. Like, it's fun. Who
I
wouldn't
like that.
Yelling Johnny.
Yeah, I was wondering if you were gonna bring up Hugh Test from Johnny Test. Like that was one of those characters where, like, I feel like you mentioned that I feel like I have an ear to be, but I wouldn't have guessed that was you unless I'd already known, like, hearing it. Okay. So I mean, I think that shows like a lot of range in that regard. But I've got to be honest, I didn't expect those to be your favorites, but I feel like this happens a lot with the majority of voice actors I've ever spoken to, and I've spoken to a handful over the years. their favorites are always the lesser knowns because they got to play around with it and make it their own. So I feel like characters like Mega Man or Goku, they're so big, there's an expectation as to the delivery. And even you being the first Goku, it's like, tell me, like, was there a lot of direction on how that had to be done? Like, you knew that he was bubbly and kind of silly, but so you literally were able to do that and create that your own as well.
Yeah. Now, did you know that my production company at the time was hired to reversion the scripts? Like I was deeply involved in the whole North American version of Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z.
I read about that a little bit, but I wasn't able to dive deep into it. So tell me about that. What was that? What was that like?
Well, it was interesting because, it's a job, right? This stuff comes in and you get some Japanese script that's been translated into English, but it's like a sort of a literal line by line translation. Yeah. And then you have to go through an episode and take that script and make it fit and make it sound like real English. So here, this opens up another topic too. Yeah. Herein lies the challenge with dubbing. It's a very different kind of acting and writing because you're making things fit. Like, there's the mouth. I need more syllables. So it can be a little mathematical. Sure. As opposed to just, what would be a marvelous line right here? You got to go, yeah, that's a marvelous line, but too many words or not enough words. So anyway, we were approached. My company had developed a bit of an expertise for reversioning these scripts and being involved in casting and directing these early anime shows. And, I'm sure I don't really remember what the titles were, but we did a bunch of them, and I don't know if we were even credited on them. I think it was just kind of like, it was a machine, like just get this stuff out, right? Mm-hmm. So to answer your direction part, actually, hold on, side point. I'm not sure if I cast myself as Goku, but I might have. It was sort of like, it's a bit blurry because we were involved in the casting. I mean, I remember casting the characters, like bring people in, what do you sound like and everything. And so if I didn't cast myself, I almost did. Maybe I convinced people I should be that guy. I should do him. Well, you sound like him. Okay, let's do that. So there was not really, and I know I'm going to be shattering dreams here, but there wasn't a lot of emphasis on, this is an iconic character and here's the background. It was really nuts and bolts. Like, we knew this is a huge project from Japan and it was hugely popular. Right. So we knew that. But you have to remember, putting yourself in the early 90s, when this stuff is starting to creep over, and animation people in general kind of went, what is that? And then, you dub it with English voices, and the acting's kind of like, because you got to fit something in there, right. And then it's not really natural, but it has to make sense. And the combination of all those things makes the old guard animation snobs go, oh, whatever. I'm going to draw my Disney masterpiece. Little did we know that it would be a phenomenon and it would resonate with kids and the hero would resonate with kids and it would be crazy. So, to be brutally honest with you, had I had a crystal ball and known how popular the show would be, not only the show, but what a cultural phenomenon it would be for kids of many ages, and then looking further in a crystal ball, that there would be a whole career, literally, of doing appearances, signatures, and autographs for said adoring fans, I probably would have said, I'll put up with making nothing and stick to it because I know that there's an end game,
Right.
but there was no end game. Like, who would know?
Right.
There wasn't even conventions the way we know them now. And the interweb was in its infancy.
Sure.
So there was just no way to know.
So I have a few
that's
questions.
that's my true confession to you.
So I have a few questions about that. So the first
Yeah.
one is, and correct me if I'm wrong, the way that you describe it, it sounds like so you were part of the Saban dub, right? Because then I believe I don't know if
that was originally, yes.
Yeah, and I think after that, correct me if I'm wrong, Peter Klamas was a part of like the Westwood dub or whatever came next, I think, unless the Saban dub and Westwoods are not the same. That's two different.
No, but interestingly enough, like people refer to the Ocean dub.
Yeah.
We recorded the Saban dub at Ocean Studios. So it's a bit of a misnomer. Ocean was just a studio.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know.
But then it transitioned, and that's a whole nother story, which I'm not going to get into because I'll probably get sued. But they became a producer.
Got it. So, okay,
That's
so
what happened
Saban
there.
was first. It was at Oceans. Okay, that's good to know. I've always wondered that because I don't think there's any place online I've ever seen that got that right, the way that they described
Yeah,
it.
well, there's a lot going on, and I'm not sure I'm the guy to break the news. But just suffice it to say that it started with a certain producer, and they came to Vancouver. The original producers in Vancouver were BLT, or at that time it might have even been Josanne Lovick Productions. Might have been.
Okay.
But they might have been BLT by that time. Those are two companies that are basically the same. They just had a name change. So it started as Josanne B. Lovick Productions, then transitioned to BLT. But they were the ones who brought that work from Saban to Vancouver.
Okay.
And then we met the guys from Funimation who, well, that's another story. I don't know how much time we have.
I mean, as much time as you
there's
want.
lots.
I was actually dying to know how it changed hands from your team to Funimation. I've never known that. I've always wanted to know if you were able to talk about it.
We worked with Funimation originally. Like this was like these guys show up, and as I recall it, I probably have the dates wrong, but I remember these guys from Texas coming up and saying, one of them had an accent and one of them didn't. And they because one was Jen Fukunawa. Is it Fukunawa?
I think so.
Anyway,
that sounds familiar. I recognize that name.
A relative of his, either an uncle or something, was the guy who had the rights to Dragon Ball in Japan. Great. And he was a youngish American businessman, Japanese-American businessman, who had this project. And these guys come up, and they're in there. They look like they work for IBM. They got starched white shirts and ties, and we're going, who are these guys? And the guy who had an accent said, we're going to make some cartoons, and we hear you guys know how to, put her all together, and you got a good talent pool, so here we are. We're from Texas. And it was a great experience. Like, they were really nice people. But they really, to their credit, they went, okay, we've got this project. What do we do with it? Let's go to where people know what they're doing. Okay. And that's what they did. That's how they ended up in Vancouver. So they very likely had a deal with Saban, but very shortly after that, like, they were in control of it. But then after several years and me leaving and all sorts of other people going, you're not paying enough for this. There's an expression in business. It's a race to the bottom, right? So everyone wants it cheaper, even if it was cheap to begin with. No, it's got to be cheaper. So that's how, some of it started getting recorded, I think, in Calgary, which I think is the Westwood. And then there's some other company involved. I was way out of it by that time. Okay. And then ultimately it goes to Texas because, well, and I can understand that. Like if you're living in some place like Tampa or Texas or whatever, and you're producing stuff, well, you don't really want to, like, it'd be great to do it in your backyard. So there was money, there was all those reasons for doing it, moving it to Texas. And that's how it, like, that's the kind of short story, not much detail, because I don't have much more detail than that, but that's sort of the progression of how it ended up there.
It's fascinating, and it fills in a lot of gaps because you don't hear about it like that. I feel like the Ocean and Westwood dubs are constantly thrown in together, but it actually turns out it was the Saban and then Ocean Studios and then Westwood and then Funimation. So that explains kind of the timeline. Right. So you also mentioned that your team put together like a change of scripts when taking the literal Japanese to English and making it to the sensical from Japanese English to North American ears. When you did that, did you guys ever receive any flack or irritation from fans? Granted,
there were no fans.
Yeah,
there were no fans. It's as simple as that. Like we had no idea what was happening in America with this stuff, because in Canada we didn't have Cartoon Network, or what was it? I think eventually they called it Toonami or something.
Yeah,
that was somewhere.
It was a block of Cartoon Network. Yeah.
Yeah. So we didn't know. We didn't know it was, and again, early days of the internet. So we don't have that kind of instant, whoa, there's a fan base, and whoa, it's growing exponentially, and whoa, people are complaining about, episode 4B. Didn't exist. This was old school TV where write something, put it out. I may never see it, right? And especially if it's on Cartoon Network, because in Canada, we did not have Cartoon Network. So there would be a Canadian dub and there'd be some versions, because I think it was YTV in Canada that played it. Okay. But it not a phenomenon. We got no feedback from fans. We would get feedback from executives, like, let's not have that little girl. Here's a story. So we're working on an episode. You'll probably know this episode. I can't remember what it was. But there was a little girl in a little short dress, as they all are.
Sure.
And she's, it's dusk, and something happens, and she ends up going off a cliff, woo, and then grabs onto a branch. She's hanging on, and the camera shot goes to a low angle, and suddenly, from beneath her are stars. And I'm looking at the script. I look at my partner. What is it? What did we miss? Is this girl magical somehow? What is it? What? And then someone from we would always have like a liaison, a Japanese guy who would go, oh no, here's what they're really saying. And he just laughed. I forget who it was, the guy, but I said, what is that? What is that? It's like, oh, that's a pee-pee. Okay, well, we're not doing that. We can't, So I think initially then the meeting started, right? Type, email. What do we do with this? The kid's peeing. We can't have that one. So I think what happened is we changed it to some kind of magical thing. We kept the scene in, I think. And I don't think it got cut. And then we had to come up with some reference to it wasn't going to be pee, right? Not in North America. In a broadcast dub. So
sure,
just a little insider anime stuff. I think it was Dragon Ball.
It sounds familiar, and I know there is a thing about Goku, like, and some of their characters showing full frontal quite a bit in like the originals, and then they were later edited out for North American audiences because of our delicate sensibilities. So yeah. Okay, so it's weird that you mentioned that there was no fandom, and I recognize this because the first time that I heard your voice in that first episode, like 25 years ago, I recognized something that I was going to fall in love with, but I didn't know it necessarily at the time to the full extent that I am here now with you. But has there been a fandom that's been developed specifically for your version of Goku and Dummy? Because I can't be the only one that loves you. There's just no way.
Oh no, I get stuff from people all the time. And it gets back to that James Bond thing. But I don't think there's a fandom necessarily. Like,
really?
The Ian is Goku. You can start that.
Facebook
How's
page.
that?
Somebody watching. Start that now.
Yep.
Share it
Yep.
in the comments below.
Yep. I'll be your mascot. But no, I don't think so.
It's interesting. You know, I've gotten into discussions in the past over the Funimation versus the Ocean dub, is what we referred to it. It now makes sense as Saban
Sure.
dub. And I don't know if I should say this. I scoured the internet and I was unable to find the Saban Westwood dubs because I recognize those voices. But eventually, in the bowels of the internet, I was able to find it, and I have every episode from you and from the later dubbings prior to the current version of the Funimation voice actors jumping in. So I have all of that, and there's a huge gap, like in the episodes. And I don't know if this was before or after your tenure, if I'm saying that right, because I know there was your kind of foundation, and then Peter picked it up and tried to emulate sort of the character that you had created, the version of that with your voice. And then from that point it shifted, and then it jumped into Sean Schemmel. So when I was looking online trying to figure out like what happened for some lost episodes there, because I know that there was a bunch of Dragon Ball redubbing for other parts of the world. Like somehow, like I think the United States got like one version, like North America got one version of the English voice acting, and the rest of the world got a different English one, and that consisted of Brian Drummond and Scott McNeil, who you would recognize as voices that you had worked with, right? And those guys, if you don't know, Brian Drummond was the original Vegeta in your dub, and he later on did a bunch of voice acting roles, but he was also, if you guys may recognize, the English voice actor for Ryuk in Death Note. Scott McNeil later went on to become Wolverine, and I believe like X-Men Evolution or like Wolverine's X-Men, whatever, a bunch of different versions of that. And now Scott McNeil, I think you can see him in Riverdale live action as Tallboy, that character.
Yes, you can.
Yeah.
Scotty is in a hit show.
That was my other question. So when you were putting together the voice acting team, did you or were you with the group of people that handpicked Scott and Brian for those roles?
Well, it's like any audition, any casting, you know. People come in and they go, you say, what characters do you want to read for? And I got these 3 or 4 or 5, depending on, you know, their ability. And you read. And then producers or decision makers, at that point I was a decision maker, we go in a room and go, what do you think? And I liked his thing for that. I liked that. Now, at that point in time, Brian Drummond was not a known quantity at all. Like that was early. So it's not like we went, oh, let's get so-and-so for this or so-and-so for that. And again, also, it's a job, right? Everyone's just shooting for a job. So what does come into play is, oh, okay, we know what Scotty can do. We know, yeah, he's good. Which ones did he read for? You know, we get this question about a good one is Beast Wars, Beast Machines. Everyone. A lot of fans think that you go in and like request a role. I would like you to cast me for this, or I would like to play this. And it's not like you walk in like, hi, I hope you like what I do. And then pick me, right? That's what auditioning is. We're very, very few people are in the voice world are, you know, get a phone call. Hey, we'd like you to do this. It just doesn't work that way. So, like in Beast Wars, I would have read for Rat Trap and Scotty would have read for Cheetor, and we all read for everything. And you end up with, you know, who above us decides like, oh, okay, I like that guy for that and that guy for that. So same thing with Dragon Ball. There was no predetermined or you know, top list by any means. It was just whoever sounded great.
So these guys basically were saying is they came in, they read, and you're like, I like the sound of him. I think he'd be good for Piccolo. And then you guys probably refined that and was like, all right. Yep. So Scott comes in, he reads for Piccolo, and you're like, all right, locking it in. That's how that went down.
Exactly.
But it sounds like your company probably had, like as you mentioned, because I don't know what Scott did prior to that or Brian Drummond, but as you said, they probably weren't as recognizable as they are today. So I feel like your team and you can single-handedly take claim and be like, we kind of made you guys the way you are. You know, I expect a Christmas card every year.
I'm not going to be able to get my head out of the booth after this complimentary interview. My Lord.
Here's the thing. This isn't a compliment. This is observation, in fact. But go on.
Maybe. I mean, sure. Maybe. We know it was a giant show. But I'll tell you this. When both of those guys and me included, none of like the fan world is the fan world. Like people go, Scott McNeil, because by the way, he is a great convention guest. Okay. He's so much better than me. He loves it. Like just can't get enough. So if you ever have an opportunity to see Scott McNeil at a convention, just go because he's great. But the fan fame is a completely different equation than doing the work and getting not just famous, but like doing well in the career. The fans might go crazy for Scotty or Brian, but I'll tell you right now, today, if we're all going to audition for a role, it's a level playing field. Like none of us, people will know us, in the business, but we're just another voice. Like it's a really weird disconnect. It's not like the movies where, you become a star because the fans go, you're a star. It's just a different world. It keeps you humble, I'll tell you that, except after today.
Hey, like I'm just calling it as I see it. Like take it as a compliment if you will, but these are facts.
I will.
From my side.
Okay.
From behind my camera over here. So you made their careers. They owe you everything. We got that.
All right. Sure. I'll email them right after this. Scotty, I'll have to phone because he doesn't. He's old school.
I gotcha. We could do that. So anime, non-anime roles. I feel like this is a question you've probably gotten before. So I gotta ask, what do you like about it? Like one over the other? Like what are the key differences? Like when you think about the difference between those two voice performing roles, what jumps out at you in comparison, anime versus non-anime?
Okay. Well, I touched on it a little bit before when I was starting to talk about writing, and it is more, anime is more of a mechanical exercise. It's not that it's not acting, and it's not that it's not writing, but you're constricted, right, by the number of flaps, by whatever's happening, whatever existed prior. So to be a good anime actor, you have to be able to watch something, hear it, and then speed up or slow down depending on what you're saying and make it fit, even though that's not the way you would ever say something in real life. So that's a very specific skill, and the people that are good at it are really, to be commended for that. Prelay, as we call it, in other words, like traditional animation, where you go in, you do a performance, a voice performance, and then the animators draw to you, like whatever you did. So if I pause like this, and then I go, I don't know, and then I have another pause, they're going to draw all that with your timings. So in terms of pure acting, prelay is so much, to me, better. Because you're breathing life into a script. You're not constrained by, unless you're nuts and read everything as long as you possibly can, and I just need to be on camera when, that line needed to be in 3 seconds.
Right.
So unless you got that problem, you're breathing real character into, like you're creating something. Whereas the anime thing is it's already been mostly created and you're putting your part into it after. So that's how I would describe it.
Okay. So, all right. So it's clear as to what the differences are. Do you have one that you like more, or are you not able to say?
Oh, I'll say it. Yeah, I like prelay.
Yeah. All right. All right.
I need to be free, just like my pants. I need to be free.
The short
I don't
pants
want any
as well
constraints.
right
yeah.
now.
No constraints. Prelay
Right.
is like, going commando. Maybe some people are, anyway. But
Freeing, liberating,
there's
liberating.
advantages. There's advantages now, and I don't want to like reduce everything to money or the money part of your career, but rarely does a prelay character get a giant fan following the way anime characters do.
Sure.
So if you're driven by ego and maybe a little bit of money, anime has potentially, it's a bit of a lottery, right? Like, brrr, click, did your character resonate? Because if it did, you're going to be going to every convention and you're going to have a signature line around the block and you're going to have a very good weekend, right? So there is that. That's so I like anime, for that part of it. Like it's a phenomenon, right?
Yeah.
Like, wow, fans, weird. Because it's not. I mean, it's certainly not why I got into the business. I just
Sure.
didn't even think that would exist. So
I am curious, and this is a little bit out of left field. This just kind of got me thinking as we're talking about this now. So this wasn't a question that I had before. But is there any sort of anime project coming up that you are going to be a part of or that you want to be a part of, or would you ever consider working with Funimation? I'm not sure how the logistics of the business of that works.
I would do. Of course, I'd do it in a heartbeat. Yeah. Especially if it was some character that I know what you're asking.
Yeah.
I know what you're asking.
Yeah. Very transparent. You see right through me.
Yeah. I mean, if someone said this is terrible because like someone already is hired to do the role, but roles change all the time. James Bond is a good example.
Yeah.
So to put it in that context, if the producers of 007 went to a previous James Bond and said, "We've got this idea, and we'd like you to be his dad," which has happened.
Sure.
Of course, I would do that. Of course, because at this stage, I know that the fans would go nuts. Like that would be a really big deal, and I would love that because I think it would be really fun. And also, another possibility, like I don't sound any different. Like I'm pretty much the same voice as I was when I did it, whatever, 25 years ago or something.
Haven't aged a day.
So, as long as you don't see this, we're good. And of course I'd do it.
It's funny you bring it up because that actually is something that is sort of happening right now. I don't know how. I'm sure it's common news among the fandoms, but we talked about the Batman comparison. Whatever Batman that you grew up with, that's your Batman. Michael Keaton is set to return as Bruce Wayne in the DC live action kind of universe as an older Bruce Wayne and potential mentor of the characters. I'm like, you know what? If Michael Keaton can come back as Batman, there's hope for you coming back as Goku someday. I know there is. I know it can happen. But if not...
Now, if any of the current voice actors are watching this, I am not vying
gunning
for
for
your
Sean's job.
Okay? Just don't. But there's no animosity. Like, to also answer your question, there's no animosity between me and Funimation, as far as I know.
Sure,
It was purely a work professional decision. I was not making enough money. I was really busy doing other stuff.
Sure.
That was far more lucrative and fulfilling.
Right.
And it was, I mean, these anime sessions I think they may have changed now, but I mean, you'd spend a day and you'd just be doing hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of lines.
Mm-hmm.
And the take home was, I mean, I could have worked at Best Buy and probably done better. And that is no knock on Best Buy. It's just kind of like, that's how many episodes did we do?
You'd expect
that's
to be making more.
Right?
I think that's a question in the industry that people don't ask, but that some fans do have, wondering about like the monetization aspect. And I don't know too many people that want to become voice actors for the money. Granted, I think they assume that it probably pays very lucrative because you see like characters on cereal boxes and video games, and the voice actor from North America is also in the video game, you know, all that stuff. But I think people just want to become voice actors because they're passionate about the characters and they really want to get in it.
Yes, and that's an interesting topic too. I mean, there are more people who want to become voice actors today than at any other time in history, because prior to the internet and anime, frankly, and maybe video games, no one even knew what a voice actor was.
Sure.
Like, you know, Hanna-Barbera, there was one guy, and sorry, Warner Brothers, that's what I meant. Mel Blanc did every voice.
Yep.
And no one, now I'm going to get struck by lightning. I mean, they all sounded like Mel.
Sure.
Every single voice. Oh, but they were great. They were really, really, really good. There was always this Mel quality to them. But it was just not the thing that it is. He was not famous for that then. Sure, people that were paying attention went, oh, yeah, that voice actor. But now it's like there's this whole culture of people that really know about voice actors and who voice actors are. And I want to become a voice actor. I think it's great, but it's just so different than when we were starting.
Yeah, times have changed too, especially since my involvement in getting involved in anime, in particular, starting with Dragon Ball Z, branching off into things. The majority of the anime shows that I've watched, they all started from that Toonami block that we talked about, and a lot of your voice work is Goku, and then Megaman and Reboot and Beast Wars and all those. Those were all shows that were on during the day, and I would watch those, and I would just be heavily invested. I had the toys, like I don't know if you could see, but like back here, right behind me,
I'm trying to see.
Yeah, I've got some Mega Man action figures like right back here as well. Like the fandom, like that, at least I consider myself a part. Like I mean, I attribute a lot of that to the performance of the actors. If it hit the ear right, then I was invested. If it fully captured the character the way that, I don't know, I guess I thought that it would, I was invested. So, I mean, I owe a lot of that to you, honestly. Like, you are sort of, no knock of age, but like the grandfather of anime for me in terms of getting me invested in it now. You're still young. I meant that as a sort of compliment.
I understand. Look, I know. This is why I do not have my picture on my webpage. I think voice actors that put their picture on their webpage, they are making a big mistake. Big mistake. Because you need to, like, the voice is a voice.
Right.
You don't want to see what someone looks like. I could shatter someone's, they listen to an audition. Oh, let me, ew. Like, he's 90.
Not quite like that. But the best ones are the voice actors, and they've got those model poses, and they're all just like, my voice.
Or they have or I love this one.
I've seen those
okay, yeah, you got a microphone, and it's always some old radio mic. Yeah, whatever.
Oh, I love it.
Terrible. I'm so cruel.
Gosh. Speaking of that, I wanted to ask real quick. I know that you're probably running short on time. I've only had a couple things I want to touch base on.
Yes, I just checked.
Your mic and headset. Like, what are you using right now? That mic stands out to me, and so does your headset. What do you got?
Oh, this is such a great mic. It's a German microphone called a Schoeps or a Schoeps, depending on what part of Germany you're from. That's spelled Schoeps, and it's a large diaphragm condenser mic, very similar to a U87 Neumann. And I'm a bit of a contrarian, and I like stuff that's a bit weird. Sure. And I found this and went, this is awesome. Plus, it has this movable. You're going to hear something right now, but it has this movable headpiece. So that you can just make micro adjustments to that instead of having to move your whole mic if you're getting a little pop or a little this or a little that. So anyway, it's a great mic. It's an expensive mic like a lot of the German mics are. And I just think it's like it's got this weird retro feel. The thing is built like a tank.
That's what I noticed. That's why I asked, because that
German
retro feel.
Like, I mean, it really is German. And my headset is a pretty standard Audio Technica MX50. Is it an MX50? Hold on. M50. And usually you see these things in black. Ooh. But these are like some special. Oh, stop it. Anyway, these are some special edition. It's kind of like a dark blue and tan.
I like it.
And I just like I've always liked the Audio Technicas. They have a nice seal, and I can hear what's going on here and not the room.
I like it.
Which isn't optimum depending on what you're doing, but for me, it's great. So these are the most comfortable. They sound great. Headphones are a weird thing. Everyone's got a personal preference, but
Gotcha.
But when I saw this special edition, I went, "Oh, that's great," because like my studio is kind of like
matches
blue and beige and brown and stuff. So, and my mic actually is blue. I don't know if you can see that.
Oh, I didn't notice. I thought it was black.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, last couple things that I've got, just real quick. Do you have any upcoming future projects that you're working on that we should know about or be looking out for?
Yes, I do, but can I tell you about any of them? I don't think so. Let me see. What have I done? Oh, no. No, I've got like 2 or 3 video games that I'm doing that I can't talk about.
Okay. Well, let me know, and I'll put it out there with the Goku account. We'll push it that way.
Yeah.
Let us know that.
I will. Upcoming. We're just finishing a. This is not your fan base. This is not going to be interesting.
This is the Ian James Corlett fan base. That's what it is.
Okay, all right. This is. I do so much preschool stuff that like there is not a fan base that's active.
I mean, they're going to be growing up listening to your voice and then hearing some other stuff and being like, all right, I'm an anime fan now. Like you're cultivating. These people are being cultivated.
Yes,
the youths of tomorrow.
Like
or whatever.
Dinosaur Train. We're doing a movie and it's going to be great because I'm the conductor on the Dinosaur Train. So like this is really weird, my friend. I got a tweet from someone and because I referenced Dinosaur Train, I showed some picture or something on Instagram. And I got all these people went, "Oh man, I remember when I was a kid. I loved that show." And I go, "Oh my God." It's only 10 years. Like we have been doing it for 10 years. But wow. Okay. Now these guys are like old enough to type and have Twitter accounts and they're referring to Dinosaur Train as, "Oh, when I was a little kid, I loved that show, man." Oh,
they want to relive it. That's the thing, is they want to relive those moments, like all those childhood cartoons and things. If they're still around today, they want to relive it.
Old when that happens. So there's that. There's Dinosaur Train. I'm all over Ninjago. That's got a huge following too. I've like practically every villain that there was and continue to be on Ninjago. So that stuff is coming out. There's new Ninjago coming out. The video games I can't tell you about.
Let me know when. We'll plug them then.
I will. And for the plug part of the episode, because I feel like we're kind of getting there. My main thing is Instagram.
Yeah, I was going to ask if there's any social media that we can follow.
Ian James Corlett on Instagram, just how it's spelled, 2 T's. And a lot of people ask. It's easy to remember because it's like Corbett, and you pronounce it the same way too, but with an L.
Right.
So it's Corlett.
Corlett.
And I do tweet some stuff, but mostly it's a flow through. It just goes like from Instagram, it goes to Twitter. Facebook, I am not on except for old people who are friends. So, not to disappoint, but I never really respond to friend requests. I get a lot of them because a lot of people are on Facebook.
Sure.
But for me, it's just like, old school friends and relatives. And
what was your Twitter handle?
Twitter is Ian James 007.
That's right. Okay. Gotcha.
So,
I could look that up, but it's better if you say it.
Yes.
All right. So lastly, before I let you go, is there any charities or additional shout outs that you're currently working with or passionate about that you would like to bring up, or anything that's close to your heart that you feel like people should be more aware about or should be involved in?
I wish I had a charity that I was, had something to do with. But in the times that we're living, I am not afraid to talk about the politics of the nation and the world.
Sure.
And I just encourage everyone, please don't ever say all lives matter. It's like someone who's, got a freshly broken arm and you're looking at them and they go, my arm's broken. Yeah, well, I broke my arm once too.
Right. It's
like saying that.
Sure.
It's like, look, it doesn't matter. You're not giving away any of yourself by not acknowledging that Black people and that movement have had it a really raw deal. Like and it should be obvious to everyone by now with the police and all of this stuff. And my other big comment is, if you don't understand what defund the police means, which I think is a terrible slogan.
Yeah.
But please put the effort in to look it up and realize that it's a realignment, it's a rejigging of what the police really should be. So those two things I feel really strongly about. And I also, I'm really going to get political, but I'm going to start something apolitical.
All right.
I want to say that I watch Fox News.
Okay.
There's a few people on Fox News that I think are actual, real journalists. And it's not Mike Wallace, it's Chris Wallace, Mike's son, on Sundays. And the actual news people. The opinion people are opinion people.
Right.
The Laura Ingrams and the other guy at night and Tucker Carlson. That is not news.
Correct.
And if you hear anything being espoused, look it up. Look it up. And it doesn't mean that you have to go to CNN because, they're the fake news. Go to the BBC.
Sure.
Go to the CBC.
I like BBC. I pay a lot of attention.
Go do your research. That's like, facts are facts. News is news. There is fake news, and you'd be surprised where the fake news is coming from. So there's my statements, and that's as controversial as I'm going to get.
I think that's important. I think it's an important point to make, is to recognize the difference between news that is factual and news that is opinionated. Know the difference, and then form your own thoughts and processes from there. But I know we got to wrap it up. So,
yes,
Ian, I can't tell you how much this means to me. If it wasn't clear throughout the duration of this interview, this has been a dream of mine. Never would 7-year-old me have ever thought that he would have fallen in love with Dragon Ball, fallen in love with Goku and the voice, and then X amount of years later be chatting with him about that and his experience. So thank you for fulfilling a childhood dream of mine and taking the time to talk to me. This has been an absolute pleasure. I would love at some point.
I'm happy to give your new podcast a boost.
That's amazing.
You know, if you've got 250,000 followers on Twitter, you know, you should have a podcast that people pay attention to. So congratulations, and I'm happy to help.
Thank you. Maybe someday, if we're lucky, when you find a little bit more time, we can have you again. But it is an honor to have you as the first guest on the first episode of this podcast. It's
my pleasure.
Amazing. But thank you again for your time. I appreciate that immensely. I know that you've got other obligations to get to, so we'll wrap it up. Just want to say thank you to those who watched. Hopefully you guys got some bit of insight into the anime and the animation world from Ian here. Be sure to follow him on his respected social media. You can see those links down in the description box below. Any comments, feedback that you guys would like to provide, be sure and do so, and I'll address those myself, and maybe I'll pitch some to Ian at some point. So thanks again, and I will see you guys next time when we continue on with our Marcanine podcast. All right, take care, everyone.
The way those two reacted, that's no natural life form. And if we're talking unnatural life forms, then we gotta be talking about just one thing. Robots in disguise! Cheetor! Maximize! Time for this cat to pounce!
I'm out of here! Where are you going?
With you!
Not a chance, Fancy Pants. I don't need any girl robots getting in my way.
You mean you don't want a girl robot showing you up?
Forget it, Roll. It's too dangerous. Come on, Rush, into action!
Yeah.